right, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream after the Monday night game between the Baltimore Ravens and New Orleans Saints, which, quite frankly, was boring in my perspective. I mean, I didn't have anybody playing in that game, and all the specific, potential prize picks entries I made did not go as planned, of course. Alvin Kamara was a complete no-show. Isaiah likely got his one catch and luckily scored a touchdown, but ultimately that was a relatively uninspiring game, to say the least. But hopefully, for those of you who needed something big on that Monday night game, something happened. You were able to get enough of a performance from a Lamar or a Kenyon Drake, Chris Olave to hopefully mount yourself a victory. Either way, the next hour plus here, I'm going to be answering your guys' questions in the chat. Of course, if you have a question, please be sure to include what your scoring format is. It certainly does help out a lot in my specific case in order to kind of give you guys the best overall advice I can in regards to potential waiver wire pickups, trades to make, and stuff like that. That's typically going to be the topic for tonight's episode. If you guys have questions regarding week 10 lineups in terms of starter sits, this is probably not the live stream to be asking, mainly because, again, I haven't done any of the research to begin ranking players for the following week. We've only just finished week 9, and our primary focus is going to be on waiver wire pickups and or trades that could potentially be made for your team going forward, and some of the injuries and the implications regarding them going into this following week. There's a reason why, of course, I have A.J. Dillon as today's thumbnail, mainly because there's a lot of speculation regarding the injury that Aaron Jones sustained on Sunday. And for those of you who do have A.J. Dillon, this is pretty much the moment you've kind of been waiting for ultimately. So it's a very interesting scenario, but the moment has arrived for him to potentially have some, I guess, eventful and or useful potential production in the coming weeks here. Unfortunately, they obviously have an immediate tough matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, but nonetheless, whoever the starting running back is for this Packers team typically finds success, and let's just hope that continues to be somewhat, relevant this week. I don't know. I mean, the fact that they didn't do anything in the running game against Detroit is just a joke, but either way. Thank you guys for joining us today. If you guys haven't yet already, be sure to click the like button down below. Certainly does help out the channel a lot. I'm going to go ahead and start answering questions. Just kind of scroll up to the top here, and we'll see what we can get going here, shall we? Let me go ahead and get the chat on screen. Actually, I need to pop it out real quick of this. Here we go. Boom. Perfect. All right. Cool. So let's see what we can do here today, shall we? This should be this. Done. Perfect. Okay. So got the chat on screen. I'll be highlighting names as I answer questions, of course. Let me go ahead and scroll up to the top here a little bit here. And what do we have here? Matt Clifford says, dump Fournette if you got him. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been on for the last couple weeks now. So, yeah, continue as such. Ever since he put together those 2 consecutive really dud performances, the expectation was him to probably continue as such going forward, as he hasn't looked good at all in any sort of capacity in the running game. And primarily that offensive line isn't going to be effective enough going forward for us to trust the idea of him maintaining value. Let's see here. Tua or Burrow rest the season? Okay, I think this is a great question. Ultimately, I would probably lean towards Burrow. But, I mean, I wouldn't put it past, considering that offense in Miami is such a, technically pass first kind of attack. And it's kind of been like that all season long, regardless of who's been at the running back position. They could potentially lean back into running the ball more now that they have Jeff Wilson and how effective he can be in said running game. Oh man, that's actually a really good question, because if you had asked me before yesterday's game, I would have probably told you that it's Burrow, like without a doubt in my mind. But now I'm having doubts in regards to what that Miami offense does in comparison. It could be a matter of rest of season strength of schedule, but right now, honestly, off the top of my head, it's close. I can't really choose one to definitively say, yeah, that one is over the other. As of right now, because it is tough. Those 2 guys are getting close, and obviously it has nothing to do with the fact that Joe Mixon scored however many touchdowns he did on the ground. I'm just thinking about rest of season value, what Jamar Chase looks like, and what his potential is to return at a healthy capacity. Let's see here. Will Dog says, given the current uncertainty around the Colts, Would you start McCole Hardman or Terrace Marshall over Michael Pittman? Yeah, I mean, at this point, considering the Colts don't technically have anybody on their coaching staff that has been a play caller before, I don't want anything to do with any of those Colts pieces right now. That includes Jonathan Taylor. That includes Michael Pittman Jr. I don't want anything to do with him in any sort of capacity, so I'm out on all of those guys. Let's see here. 4-point per passing have Fields and Cousins. Should I get Deshaun Watson this week or keep riding with Fields? Yeah, why wouldn't you keep Fields? It doesn't make sense to me. Jet. There is nothing that says that you should be dropping Justin Fields in the near future. So you don't need Watson, and you probably won't need him in the future either. I think you'll be fine with Cousins and Fields. The only reason you should ever pick up Deshaun Watson is if you're playing in a super flex format, or if you're playing in a 1 QB format in which you don't have a quarterback that is going to be able to compete with other quarterbacks when you get to those fantasy playoffs. It gives you an out to potentially pivot. Let's say, for example, if you've been starting guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and Daniel Jones the whole year, you have the ability to then pivot in the direction of a Deshaun Watson who could provide more upside in those given games late in the season that could, balance out a little bit of the imbalance that you have at quarterback. The last few Lamar runs saved me. You won by point. Yeah, look, a lot of you are I'm telling you, there's going to be people in this chat that said that they probably won by most likely a point and lost by a point. It happens every single week, and now we hear it every Monday. Matchups get close and they get tight, and it's kind of crazy how 1 or 2 plays within a given week make an entire, fantasy week and potentially could impact the entire season. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to just go back straight down to the bottom of this chat, just kind of catch up with everybody. Let's see here. Is it worth holding Likely, or is he a drop? Carl, I would say he's absolutely a drop. Considering Mark Andrews will be healthy when he returns in week 11, yeah, it's absolutely a drop in my mind. Big J says, I barely squeaked it with a win tonight. Had Kamara and Olave, got 199.35 and beat my opponent. Wow, that is, that's close. Lost by 4 points. I had Kamara, Likely, Lamar. Earlier, Likely dropping. Yep. Kamara, no touchdown. Yeah, Kamara, no touchdown. Again, that's the volatility of fantasy football, man. If the offense isn't able to get down there and hand the ball off, if the game situation just doesn't go in the direction that we need it to, sometimes it doesn't click. Quite frankly, I don't think Kamara needed a touchdown in this game. I needed him to get receptions. And quite frankly, he was completely non-factor in the receiving game, which was quite a surprise to me in comparison to what we've seen him produce all season long with Andy Dalton under center. So that was the biggest kind of me scratching my head thinking, what was going on here? Why isn't Alvin Kamara getting more utilization in the receiving game, especially in a matchup in which the coverage is so tight like the Baltimore Ravens played? Let's see here. Going to start counting every time, he says, quite frankly, to say the least. Retro, if you make a counter, you're going to be in the thousands. Like it's gonna go fast. Like no joke. Just go watch today's video and try to do the counter. I guarantee you that the combination of those two is probably near 50. Like I don't know. I'm just guessing, obviously, but it's gonna be up there. Retro. There are a lot of lines that I use as fillers. Like I use it passively. Like I don't even know that I'm doing it. But because I'm not like a professionally trained speaker per se, there are often times that I use transition words like that get me in a little bit of trouble. I know it annoys some of you, but hey, that's just the way it is. Sorry, let me clarify. Keep Likely. If I also have Dulcich, you don't have to keep Likely again. I think Dulcich is the way to go, and you can keep him if you would like, but ultimately, I think it's probably more impactful to your roster to go and pick up another player while Likely is on bye week that could end up having value and, could be a stash play that develops into a better player that perhaps could even play for your team going forward. So, I'm perfectly fine with dropping Likely considering you have the tight end depth to go ahead and make that swap. All right, there were a couple of donations sent in. Let me go ahead and address those really quickly. Diego sent in a question. He said, all right, I got Aaron Rodgers as my QB1. Yeah, he looked terrible yesterday, didn't he? That was very interesting how inaccurate Aaron Rodgers was, because typically, the number one thing that has separated Aaron Rodgers from other quarterbacks in the past has been his accuracy and his ability to be able to get the ball into those tight windows. And wow, Does he look like he's fallen from grace? Anyway, so you have A-Rod as your QB1. Should I trade Kamara and Keenan Allen for Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes, Swift, and Hollywood. Also have AJ, CD. Okay, here's the thing. I would immediately say probably not, mainly because I don't expect to see Swift playing at a full capacity for maybe another 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to be totally honest. Swift played literally 10 snaps, and even though he looked like he could have scored a touchdown, for those of you who are Swift managers, you saw he literally got tackled down at the 1 yard line on that reception, could have scored a touchdown, could have had himself a 10-point week, but unfortunately wasn't able to do so. But he went from playing 33 snaps of the entire offense in week 8 to playing 10 in week 9. So he regressed in terms of overall utilization, which in my opinion makes me believe that his injury got worse, and that's why they limited him even more. So I don't know what the deal is here, but I don't think I can even in any capacity trade for DeAndre Swift without knowing what your team's record is and what your potential is because you have Jonathan Taylor, which is already scaring me. You have Swift, which is another one of these. If you were to get Swift, it would also be a disaster. So at this point, yes, I would love to improve upon your quarterback situation, but I don't think getting Swift in return for a Kamara is going to help you in this regard in any sort of capacity. I think it, quite frankly, hurts your chances going forward. Carlton sends in a question, says, in an 18 PPR league, trade Olave and Goddard for Ramondre Stevenson, ? I have Fields, Pierce, JT, Evans, CeeDee Lamb, Hill, Goddard. My bench is Fryer, Muth, Khalil Herbert, Olave, and Foreman. Okay, so you would be playing Hill at tight end for the remainder of the year. Or no, you would play Fryer, Muth at the tight end position for the remainder of the year. And then Olave would be replaced with CeeDee Lamb and Mike Evans. And then who else is your other wide receiver? You don't have any other wide receivers. I mean, I guess you can get away with this trade. But okay, so here's the thing. This is what I would tell you, Carlton. The immediate thing that you should probably look to do is get Jonathan Taylor off team immediately. I mean, the fact that they just brought in a head coach who quite literally has not coached in the National Football League before, the fact that he has no idea what offensive scheme they're even running. He doesn't know the plays. He doesn't know anything. I think the dysfunctionality in which the Colts are beginning to trend towards is super dangerous. And quite frankly, you do this change because you don't care whether you win or lose. You just want somebody to come in, change the culture. And if you lose every game for the rest of the way and you end up your season being, how many games are 17 and they've played 8 so far? If they end up going, 2-8-1 no, it's not 8. Sorry. If they lose out, let's say, for example, how many games are left for them? 9 games. If they go legitimately 2-14-1, and that's their end of season record, they wouldn't care because they want the number 1 overall pick. So this trade's fine by me, but you gotta have to go ahead and turn around and get rid of JT to bring in more depth. That's the only thing that I'm thinking, Carlton. Thank you. Corey Olson says, hey, Andrew. I just came away with a big win now. I'm tied for number 1 in my league. We're currently 6-1, won by 2 points, and I'm looking to upgrade a wide receiver. Who would you go after? I'm looking to move Swift and Williams. So if you're gonna trade the combination as a complete duo, you're gonna have to go for like at least a wide receiver 1 in my mind. Like if you're not gonna trade for a wide receiver 1, I think you'd be making a mistake as an entire kind of investment outright. At this point, I'm thinking if you can trade both and go get AJ Brown, you should. If you can trade both and go get Jalen Waddle, I think that works as well. Obviously, guys like Devontae Adams was a guy that I was kind of harping on last week after that kind of dud performance. Obviously, he's coming off of a really, I guess, impactful performance, but he's also dealing with a little bit of a rib injury, so we don't know what his status is going forward. But players like Waddle are, in my mind, our wide receiver 1 kind of caliber rest of the way, but also don't have like the impact of which, a Jefferson, Kupp, Chase, Hill, in terms of name brand, they don't hold as much value in that regard. So that's kind of where I'm looking at as of this moment. Let's see here. Moving on, FF says, Standard League, concerned about Josh Allen. P/U, Jimmy G, or I mean, look, at this point, you should probably pick up another quarterback just in case. Josh Allen has had elbow issues in the past. If you guys remember his rookie year, did he have Tommy John surgery? That's what I'm trying to remember. I know he was out for a pretty significant amount of time, but if in fact he's going to have any sort of missed time, which I doubt, but even if he struggles at any point, this could be a problem because he's a mobile quarterback, and if he's going to have an issue throwing the ball and or making contact with defenders when he tries to run the ball, this could certainly impact his value. So at this point, if you want to pick up Jimmy G and Watson, you don't have to pick up both. I think just picking up Jimmy G is perfectly fine because Watson you'd have to wait for quite some time. Keone says, I want to stash Terrace Marshall. Should I drop Isaiah Likely? Yes, that's perfectly fine by me. No problem at all with that. V sends in a question, says, I dropped Cousins for Fields. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I don't mind that. I think Cousins, of course, is a base, like, hey, I'm going to be a top 12 quarterback, but I'm going to be number 10, 11, or 12. While Justin Fields right now looks like he's going to be more like, 7, 8, 9. So at this point, yes, I'm willing to make that swap. Also, Freiermuth or Komet? Yeah, Freiermuth significantly more valuable in my eyes. Specifically, rest of season value. As for this week, of course, the fact that, Fields, Komet, those, Khalil Herbert, Montgomery, they're going to have the privilege of taking on Detroit Lions defense. If we're just picking one this week, ring back to me on Thursday. I'll probably have a quarterback and tight ends video in terms of rankings by that day. Your follow-up question is, okay, my team is full PPR, Cousins, JJ, Eckler, Walker. My tight end is one of those two guys, Stevenson, Carlson. I mean, look, you got a really good team across the board. I think Fields only just helps improve it rest of the way. I mean, there's a reason why last week, guys, we made it such a priority to put him on the thumbnail for our waiver wire episode. The guy was on a hot streak, and he doesn't seem like he's slowing down anytime soon. I mean, there's a reason on Sunday morning I had him as my number 3 ranked quarterback. His rushing potential is there. And when he breaks out a 61-yard rushing touchdown, that obviously skews the scales in one direction rather than the other. Let's see here. Daniel Joyce says, hey, mate, what the heck do I do with Fournette? Any trade ideas? Love the channel. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so here's the thing about Leonard Fournette. If you want to move him for a running back in specific, it's going to be extremely difficult to do so. That being said, you could get away with moving him in trades like, okay, I'm going to send away Leonard Fournette and I'm going to get Michael Carter in return. You could legitimately do that. And I guarantee you someone would accept it. But I don't know if that's going to be able to fix your issue, right? Because you're going to send a running back who's relatively inconsistent now, who's probably going to continue to be inconsistent to a team that, or for a player that most likely will be just as inconsistent. I don't know if you'll be able to get as much value out of him as you'd like. Quite frankly, if you can get guys like Miles Sanders, by all means, that's a fantastic exchange of value. But outside of that, you're really gonna have to dig deep with like Michael Carter's of the world, maybe going out and being like, you know what, I just want Tony Pollard, and I'm just gonna hope that he ends up outright winning that job. You can't move him for Patterson anymore. We talked about Patterson weeks ago, right? I put him on the thumbnail of that rest of season strength of schedule video for a reason. His schedule is stacked. He's going to be putting up these big games every week. I doubt you could sell him for Patterson. So you're going to have to go for guys that are undervalued or I guess names that aren't as, I would say, popular. Mainly Miles Sanders and or guys like Michael Carter going forward, who at least I can trust in the fantasy playoffs because of their strength of schedule. Cinco2X says full PPR. Would you send this offer, Kelsey, for Christian McCaffrey? Yeah, I don't mind that. I think I talked about this on Saturday or on Sunday. It was probably Saturday of last week. Just a couple days back. The reason why I'm perfectly fine making that trade, just to clarify, is because if Christian McCaffrey continues this trend of catching the ball as much as he did last week, there is a very good chance that we get a game here in which, or not even just a game, probably a streak of games here from Christian McCaffrey where he's 25 points plus. We're going to see the Christian McCaffrey of old, the 2019 version of him. And if we're going to see that, I think it's certainly worth trading him for Kelsey. Of course, under the assumption you have at least some semblance of tight end consistency going forward. But yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that swap. Okay, let's see here. What was Troy saying? I'm rocking with no QB until Watson comes back. I can't with Rodgers and Brady. Yeah, they're awful. It's crazy how these two guys were quite literally. This guy was the MVP last year, and Brady should have won the MVP last year, and now they're the worst. It is absolutely a comedy. It really is. Let's see here. Is Rodgers finished after Dobbs' injury? Rodgers has been finished since the beginning of the year, guys. I don't know if you remember, but I had him ranked as my number 14 or 15 ranked quarterback before the season started. So I never had hope that, Rodgers was going to be anybody this season. So the fact that he's even done as much as he has been a surprise to me without, of course, Devontae Adams. Cole Kmet or Otten for my bye week this week. I probably lean towards playing Otten instead of Kmet. But here's the thing. The only issue and or potential for concern would be if Cameron Brate does come back, right? My assumption is that they're probably going to lean towards playing the young man because he is just better overall, better blocking, better receiving threat. So my assumption is that Otten will end up being the starter when they go to Munich this week. They're going to be the very early Sunday game. But yeah, that's why I have him ranked ahead of him in my waiver wire episode right now. Survived another week 8-1, baby. Hey, 8-1 is a crazy record. Congratulations, Hazard. Let me go ahead and scroll up a little bit. Okay, James Conner and St. Brown for Chase and Hunt. Again, this is all risk, right? The assumption of whether or not Chase is going to come back at a full capacity, I don't know. They've not released enough information in regards to his injury and what the potential of him is rest of the season. If I was to speculate, which is purely what I'd have to do, if I'm purely speculating on his health, if he's avoiding the injured reserve, it's not at a significant enough position for the injury to hold him out longer than expected, then I'm okay with this as like a preliminary idea. But Matthew, here's the thing. You have to have a squad that legitimately can afford to not use him on roster for the next, I'd say, well, they have bye this week. Let's say he misses the week after that. You won't be able to use him until the week 12. If you're okay with that and you can survive until then, knowing that in week 12, 13, and 14, you can utilize him prior to the fantasy playoffs, then by all means, you're good there. But otherwise, it would be risky to do it if you're not able to and your record is at a negative point. You're maybe 4-5 at this point. It'd be a little bit risky if you were to give away starting value from your team to try to get someone who's not going to play for you. Stream Russell Wilson or Daniel Jones. I think you know the answer to that. We're playing Daniel Jones. We're not playing Russell Wilson. I need to pick up a tight end, Mike Gesicki. Who should I pick up? I don't even know who you have available, dude. If you haven't checked out my waiver wire video from earlier today, hopefully those guys are available. The top 3 priority was Greg Dulcich, number 1, Cade Otton, number 2, Cole Kmet, number 3. If you've got one of those 3 available, go for them. Let's see here. What do we have? Chan says, should I trade away Kyler Murray and Josh Palmer to get Zach Ertz and Jalen Waddle? Kirk Cousins would be my new starter. I'm fine with that. Just purely, I don't even care about Zach Ertz. It's fine to get him in return. I would be willing to make this trade for Waddle alone. I would give away Kyler Murray and Josh Palmer for Waddle alone by itself. So the fact that you'd also be able to get Ertz in return is just bonus for me. So yes, I'm willing to take that deal. Michael, don't know what you're referencing to here. Oh, here it is. I'm hoping. Wait, what does it say? I'm hoping to offer Aaron Jones and one of ASB, Alan Lazard, Debo or Keenan. Okay, here we go. What kind of package would you expect? Okay, for Travis Etienne. So if you're going to trade Aaron Jones, who's injured right now, you most likely would have to trade your most valuable prospect. So of those 4 receivers, you probably would have to send Debo as well. And if you're able to get away with that, where you send Aaron Jones and Debo and you get Travis Etienne back, I'm all for it. I think that's enough in my mind. Would you trade Patterson for A.J. Brown and James... Wait, what? Would you trade Patterson for A.J. Brown or James Robinson for Amon-Ra St. Brown? Yes, I would do probably both of those trades. Again, if you're trading running backs for receivers, the whole question, Juan, would then begin at what does your running back depth look like? Can you afford to give away both those trades? If you're just picking one, I'd probably say, hey, you know what? To be honest, I'm comfortable with both of them. I probably want to keep Patterson if I was in need of a running back, mainly because Atlanta's already passed the position of where I think, what do they have? A week 14 bye. they're going to have a good stretch of games here, next 4 or 5 games, which Patterson probably puts up 15 points per game. So at this point, most likely we'd like to keep Patterson there and then ship away James Robinson in comparison. Appreciate it. What do you think about Waller rest of season? I mean, dude, quite frankly, there it is. Count it up. Whoever was talking about counting that up. I think, wow. Waller right now is so desperately needed within that organization. It is ridiculous. They need another pass catcher to be a consistent option there. And I don't know why Mac Hollins wasn't asked to do more this past Sunday. But obviously, as soon as, Devontae Adams got hit in the ribs, slowed down, pretty much was a non-factor in the second half because of it. That's when they needed to run the ball and or get effective runs and then hit play action over the middle with Darren Waller. Hopefully he's healthy this week. And when he is, I truly think rest of season, he's easily a top 8 tight end when healthy. Yeah, no problem. Okay, we did that. Yep. What wide receiver can I trade for Dak? Trade for Dak? Again, it's not a matter of which wide receiver can you look, who has Dak in your league? And if you have Dak, bro, start knocking on doors. Don't ask me what you can get in return. Go ask them what they want. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of this is a matter of your league mates. I don't know. Some of your league mates may just be stingy and they don't want to give away players for anything, right? So even if I give you a name, doesn't mean it's going to equate. You know what I mean? You got to go find someone who's in desperate need of a quarterback, or if you're the one who's looking for a quarterback, you got to evaluate your team as a roster altogether and determine your needs and your fantasy point contributions from which positions. And then, of course, look at the waivers and see, can you fill in? Like, if you're trading away a wide receiver for Dak Prescott, you got to evaluate, is there enough value on my bench to be able to kind of meet that gap of value that I'm getting an upgrade at quarterback for in comparison to wide receiver? Are guys like Terrace Marshall, Donovan Peoples-Jones off the waivers going to be able to help me rest of the way? Donald says I'm 8-1 too. Jeez, dude, why are there so many 8-1s? How do you guys keep doing this? I legitimately, I do not have an 8-1 team. I got some after today. I got some 7-2s across the board, but 8-1 is that's tough. I know there's a couple of undefeateds out here, but that's crazy. Jeff Wilson or Palmer for the flex this week? Again, Michael, as of right now, no clue. I don't even know who they're playing, quite frankly. I'm going to be totally honest. So we'll get to that as the week progresses. We'll probably know by Thursday night after, the Thursday night football game. We'll live stream and we'll have those kind of questions kind of hammered out. But again, I haven't done any of my research in regards to anything week 10 related as of right now. There were a couple more. Okay, there's one more question that was sent in from Nick. Nick says, Michael Carter, Kenyon Drake on buys next week. Kind of thin at running back in my waivers. But would you start Tyler Algier versus the Panthers despite Cordero Patterson being back? Yes, I would. Again, just look what Tyler Algier did this last Sunday. Had himself 99 rushing yards. Was extremely efficient in terms of the running game because of how advantageous the matchup was. He was able to perform relatively well against the Carolina Panthers just a couple days back in week 8 against them. So yeah, I'd still be very comfortable playing against them because I know that this team wants to utilize more than one running back in a rotation. So yeah, you're good to go there. Is Higbee worth playing anymore? Probably not. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't think so. 3 consecutive dud weeks is enough for me to be like, all right, you're dead to me. And it's just like it's a phrase rather than an actuality. But at this point, yes, I think it'd be worth it for you, Camo, to go out and probably pick up Cole Kmet or Kate Otten, whichever one you're able to acquire. If you're going to pick one, it's probably Otten out of the bunch. Let's see here. I have Ramondre, Jamal Williams, Montgomery, Gordon, and Jonathan Taylor. Who should I go for in order to replace Taylor? I mean, at this point, you would need to bring back a running back in exchange for Taylor, like outright, right? Because at this point, Ramondre Stevenson is your most valued running back. Montgomery and Gordon are probably not startable options. I think they're technically flex options in a good matchup. Like technically this week, Montgomery versus Detroit is a startable option. Jamal Williams, I guess, will have value until DeAndre Swift comes back in some sort of capacity. But again, we don't know what that timeline looks like. And at this point, he may never go away in that backfield as of the 2022 season. So if you're giving away Jonathan Taylor and you have to get a running back in exchange, it would be, I think it would be a little bit easier in order to make a trade for guys that I've mentioned before. I don't know if it's possible. I'm throwing it out there. You're going to have to knock on some doors and ask around. But if you can get a Dameon Pierce, Thank you very much. I'll take it. Outside of him, when I'm looking up and down this board at running back, there's no way anyone's giving you Eckler, Henry, Chubb, Mixon, McCaffrey, Barkley, Stevenson. You already have. Fournette is not worth it. Jones is injured. We're not really sure about that as of right now. Pierce will take. Miles Sanders, I guess technically will take. No one's giving you Walker. If you can get Kamara, let's do that as well. Dalvin Cook, no one's giving you that. You already have Jamal Williams. Pollard is not worth it at this point because there's too much risk inherently there. You're not getting ETN in exchange. So quite frankly, if you're just looking across the board, the most potential options, Pierce, Sanders, Patterson. Those would be the guys you have to go after. And yes, in comparison to where you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you may not even be able to get those guys in return because people understand what the Colts are doing now. And what they're doing is tanking. It's pretty tough, man. It's pretty tough. Jordy sends in a question, says, should I trade Najee Harris for DK? Yes, absolutely. I have Zeke, Waller, and Hendo with Stevenson on bye this week and Walker on bye the week after. I'm 6-3 and then third place. Yeah, look, I think overall, the trade will probably help your team more than it hurts it in the long run. As of right now, Najee Harris, I'd love to see him carry the ball 20 times per game, get a couple red zone rushing attempts every single game, but from what we've seen from him thus far this season, the way that the organization is kind of saving him in order to make sure he doesn't get injured for future years, it's pretty much what I'm expecting to see out of Jonathan Taylor for the rest of the year. Very limited utilization, a rotation out of the backfield in order to, yes, have him active, but preserve his seasons for the future. If the organization is smart, they're not going to run them into the ground because they know the rule of I think it's the rule of 1,500 touches. In the National Football League, when you touch the ball 1,500 times throughout your career, that's pretty much where the decline begins, unless your name is Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler or Christian McCaffrey. So across the board, it seems like they're going to preserve these guys' health and not run them into the ground. So I'm perfectly fine making that trade. All right, let's see here in the chat. Trying to upgrade on Higgins. I have Ramondre trying to upgrade on Higgins. What do you mean on Higgins? Like, you're trying to trade Higgins for a wide receiver? Is that what you mean by that? I have Ramondre and Tony Pollard to move with him. Oh, okay. So we're really trying to move him. Goodness gracious. Ridge, I would say that oh man, I don't even want to move any of those guys. Why would we look to move these guys? If you're going to move a duo, theoretically, okay? It wouldn't be Ramondre. You would send Higgins and you would send Pollard and you would probably try to go get, at this point, top 5 wide receiver, top 5 running back. You probably can't get a top 5 running back for that. No one's going to give you Alvin Kamara for that. I mean, they could. It depends on the desperation of the team. I honestly don't even want to move off these players. I'd rather keep Higgins with all the speculation around Jamar Chase. And honestly, I think that Tony Pollard's probably going to outsnap and outplay Zeke for the rest of the season here. Alrighty, so for those of you who are joining us, again, I want to thank you guys for joining us after this Thursday night football game. Quite, I'd say quite boring game overall. But either way, that's just football. Monday night games have been, here or there over across the season. Again, the teams that we're playing, one of them's a run-first team. The other is a Andy Dalton-led team. That kind of gives you an idea as to where we got here tonight. But thank you guys for joining us. If you guys have not yet already, be sure to click the like button down below. Certainly does help out the channel a bunch. If you're going to send in a question, please be sure to go ahead. Mention the scoring format. Would definitely be preferred. Again, Michael, like I was mentioning earlier, don't have an answer for you. Mainly because I haven't done any of the research for this week. So if you guys have questions regarding waiver wire or trades, that's the primary thing that we want to cover right now. Any starter sit questions for week 10, don't have the answers for you. I'll have them by tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, as those rankings videos subsequently will come out on those days. Thank you. You're 9-0. Goodness gracious. I got a feeling I'm losing this week. I mean, it's possible, but hey, you've already clinched the playoff spot at 9-0, so there's nothing really to worry about. Let's see here. 8-man league, Cup, Allen, what is this? Amon-Ra St. Brown, Alan Lazard, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Jacobs, okay. Muth, Pitts, this guy is high on Jacobs and is offering me Swift and Olave for him. And Myers. Swift. Wait, what? Swift and Olave for him and Myers. I'm honestly in the. I don't even know if I want to take that, to be honest. I don't think you have to take that, Ibrahim. Mainly because if you're giving away Josh Jacobs, who's a healthy running back right now, and you're going to get Swift in return, who, in my opinion, may not be at a full healthy capacity for the next 2-3 weeks here, maybe 4, it doesn't help your team. Now, when you get to the fantasy playoffs, sure, if he's at a full capacity by then and he doesn't re-aggravate his injury and isn't held out for the remainder of the year because it's a really bad football team and they don't have to use him because they're not going to make the playoffs, at that point, they may just shut down Swift. I think it's just all risk. You can take it if you'd like, but I don't like it, to be totally honest. I don't like it across the board because there's so much implicated injury risk that revolves around Swift right now. I have Gerald Everett and Dalton Schultz rostered. Should I drop one of them for great? Yeah, honestly, at this point, I would rather have Dalton Schultz over the bunch here rest of season. He's my highest ranked tight end of the group. Next highest would probably be Greg, so I don't mind dropping Gerald Everett for him, to be totally honest. It's just a matter of his lack of utilization, even when there were so many people out, concerns me because we know that Keenan Allen's coming back, Mike Williams coming back, Donald Parham's coming back, and when they do, Gerald Everett is just going to disappear, and Greg Dulcich is going to be that much more valuable in the potential weeks. 2 and 7 are Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown worth holding on to rest of the season. I mean, look, at 2 and 7, you have to trade them both. That's my immediate thought, Jake. You have to literally, considering, let's say you play in a 12-team league. Let's say 8 teams make the playoffs. You have to win out to make the playoffs. You got to win 5 consecutive weeks here in order to be in playoff contention. So in order to win 5 consecutive weeks, you probably have to send both of them away for one singular good player and just hope. That's really what you have to do at this point. And specifically, you're trading for players that have already surpassed their bye weeks. Do not look for players who have a bye week in the future because you won't be able to afford that. Is Mahomes, Pierce, Pickens for Lazard, Godwin, Garrett, Cousins, and Sanders worth it? Lazard, Godwin, Garrett Wilson, Cousins, and Miles Sanders. I don't know what the rest of your team looks like. If I was just thinking in a vacuum, how are you going to start all 3 of these guys? Like, if these are going to be your 3 starting wide receivers because you don't have any, then I think it's worth it. But if you're only going to start one of these 3 guys, what's the point? Do you know what I mean? So at this point, I think it could be worth it, but it just depends. Mahomes for Jacobs and Brady. Do you want? Oh, man. Okay, so I think this question is purely revolving around what you have at running back and how desperate you are in order to acquire running back. Because the drop-off of production when you compare Mahomes and Brady is so significant that you better have no one at running back. And man, Jacobs has been really inconsistent too. Conventional wisdom would lead me to say yes, but it has its risks. But considering you're bringing back a top 12 running back, in my mind, I'm okay with it. Again, a lot of risk, though, in this entire conversation. Yeah, that is a lot of risk, especially if you're going to have to start Brady every single week. It's probably not worth it. Because unless you can maybe, you make this trade, you get Jacobs, then you can take Brady, use him in some sort of other trade, and get back some other quarterback that maybe is like a Kirk Cousins that is at least consistent to some sort of capacity, or go pick up somebody off waivers like a Jimmy G that could present some value in that kind of position. And at that point, if you're going to have to make those kind of trades, why not just trade Mahomes for a better running back to begin with instead of Jacobs? So that you don't even have to worry. Just like send Mahomes and go get Travis Etienne. You know, at that point, at least you'll have a 1-for-1 that's relevant. And then you can pick up a guy off waivers like Jimmy G and just roll him for the rest of the season. All right, let's see here. Rondell. Yeah, it's not Randall, but it's Rondell. It's okay. Droppable. Hollywood coming back next week. I think you could probably keep him for one more week. After that, I guess if you're going to have to pick up Josh Allen's backup quarterback, then it's fine to make the drop. I don't mind that. Concern of Diggs with Josh Allen injury. Yes, there's a lot of concern with that. Again, it's going to be a matter of how long is he going to be out? Is he going to miss any time? If he does miss any time, then yes, certainly we're concerned because I don't even know who the backup quarterback is for that team. I think it's Chase Sorry, I think it's Case Keenum, right? Case Keenum can get the job done. We're not too worried about him. He's a good enough quarterback. He's led the Vikings to the playoffs before. But it's certainly a downgrade for sure. Start Cordero Patterson. Okay, again, the starter sit questions for week 10 have not even begun to calculate in my mind. This one's easy though. I mean, it's definitely Cordero Patterson on Thursday night. Yeah, definitely. It's not even close to my mind. Okay, let me get some of these donation questions that were just sent in. Let's see here. What do we have here? Nathan Williams says, I have Christian McCaffrey, Stevenson, Swift, Patterson as my running backs. Okay, you're pretty much stacked at running back then. Which of them would you look to move? If you're potentially going to move one, it's DeAndre Swift. But I honestly think you don't have to, because Christian McCaffrey, Stevenson, and Patterson will allow you to have 3 consistent running backs, 2 at your starting running back position and 1 at your flex for the next 2 to 3 weeks here until Swift is at a full capacity. And at that point, you'll get Swift back and then you'll be an unstoppable team. But that being said, I already have Hopkins, Lamb, Adams, Juju as my wide receivers. Again, if you're going to trade away Swift or any of these players in order to get back a prospect, you're not going to be able to improve much at wide receiver. And quite frankly, unless you're going to improve at quarterback or tight end, it just doesn't seem like it's worth making that deal. I'm just looking at your roster altogether. You've got to have a winning record at this point, right? I mean, I know you've dealt with a lot of injuries with Swift and Patterson, and then Hopkins only just recently came back, but your team looks like they're catching their stride at this point in the year, where I don't want to move any of them. Thank you, Nathan. But again, if you're going to move someone, it's Swift, and you'd look to upgrade at tight end, maybe go and try to buy low on Mark Andrews, and or go try to get a quarterback if you need one. Not sure if you do. Friendly says half PPR. My wide receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Ayuk, and Michael Williams on the injured reserve. Can I drop Michael Pittman Jr. safely? I don't know. Yes, you can drop him safely. Considering your entire team, I don't think you will ever utilize Michael Pittman Jr. unless they were to switch back to Matt Ryan. I doubt that they go back to Matt Ryan, mainly because they don't want to win games. They want to lose, and they want the number 1 overall pick. Thank you. Real G squared. I don't even know what that is. Is that a hippo? Okay, interesting. Let me see your G squared. You have a question in the chat? Nothing? Okay. I appreciate that though. Thank you. Ray sends in a question. Thank you, Ray. Says, I'm thinking about proposing Hurts and Taylor for Hines and Dillon. What? Wait. You want to trade Jalen Hurts and Jonathan Taylor for Nyheim Hines and AJ Dillon? Absolutely not. No way. No, never. I'm not even going to explain it. Do not take it. If you take it, just unsubscribe to the channel. No, I'm just kidding. But in reality, that doesn't make any sense. It's a completely ass backwards trade. You'd be trading the second or third best quarterback in the league for a backup running back and a backup running back. And I understand Dillon could have value, but it's not like Aaron Jones tore his ACL or his Achilles. He's not out for the season. If anything, he misses 1 to 2 weeks and he's coming back, the week after. So no, this is a terrible trade. Hopefully we can readjust that. And if you're looking to move Jalen Hurts and Jonathan Taylor, we're going after top tier talent, not backup running backs. Chris Vasquez says, I'm looking to upgrade Leonard Fournette in a half PPR scoring format. Yeah, you can't upgrade Leonard Fournette. That's the issue. I also have Eckler, Stevenson, DK, Pittman, Thielen, Curtis Samuel, and Gallup. Who should I target? Again, I was mentioning this before. If you can somehow, some way, turn Leonard Fournette into a Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, or at very worst, Michael Carter, at this point, you could take the trade and just move on with it. I think I'm far more inclined to do it with Dameon Pierce and Miles Sanders. I don't want anything to do with Michael Carter unless I'm in a total desperation move. Considering your roster, considering you'll have Eckler and Stevenson, obviously Stevenson's on bye this week, but considering you'll have Eckler and Stevenson rest of the way as your 1 and 2, it's just a matter of, yes, you want to upgrade this position so that your flex is in a little bit of a better position overall. It's just tough. You might have to move Fournette with DK Metcalf in order to improve him. And at that point, your starting wide receivers, considering Pittman isn't of value, would be Thielen and Curtis Samuel, which really could hurt your team. So unless you can actually trade a 1-for-1 here or trade Leonard Fournette with Michael Pittman to someone who is really not paying attention, that would be the only move that you could theoretically make here, Chris. Appreciate it. What do we have here? Michael, are you watching me on mute? Michael Barton? How many times do I got to tell you I don't have an answer for Jeff Wilson or Josh Palmer? I can't even answer. I know you donated. I appreciate that. I don't have an answer for you, my man. I legitimately don't. And quite frankly, it's Monday, right? We don't have to make that decision till Sunday. So yeah, again, I can't answer it. When we get to Thursday's live stream, I'll remember you asked the question. We'll try to answer it then. But for now, yeah, it's just not even a question I even can consider answering at this point without all the information that I need to collect. Of course, Keenan Allen coming back, all these kind of different factors that'll definitely play an overall variable role within the decision. Stanley sends in a question. Thanks, Stan. You appreciate that. Says, I need a wide receiver one. I have Marquise Hollywood Brown in the IR. My lineup is Kyler, Aaron Jones, Eckler, Kittle, Lazard, Gabe Davis. My bench consists of Josh Palmer, Rondell Moore, Jalen Warren, Singletary, Freiermuth, and Claypool. I'm 5-4 currently. You need a wide receiver one, huh? Man. Okay, so here's the issue, first and foremost. If, in fact, you were to trade Aaron Jones, you would then have to start Singletary for the remainder of the season. I don't think that's a possible thing that you want to do. So you can't trade Eckler, you can't trade Aaron Jones. Then at that point, you have Marquise Hollywood Brown, which is returning. That's fine. But you can't get rid of Kittle either because you don't have a backup tight end except for Fryer. Actually, you could mess around with Freiermuth there technically. But I wouldn't want to. I'd rather just keep Kittle at that point. Across the board here, Stanley, from your team, unless you're moving guys like Allen Lazard, which in my opinion, I mean, every time he's healthy, the guy's scoring a touchdown. Why do I want to even move him? He's a solid wide receiver too. Gabe Davis is in a little bit of a tricky situation. Otherwise, Josh Palmer, Rondell Moore, Jalen Warren, Claypool, they don't have value. So those guys are not really tradable pieces unless you're going to, dupe someone into buying in on them. Mainly, you can perhaps get someone to buy in on Joshua Palmer's big week here with 108 receiving yards and a couple catches there. So maybe you could. But if you're going to make a trade for a wide receiver one, you're going to have to send away probably a Kittle, a Lazard, and or a Marquise Hollywood Brown, or a combination of the three in order to get one in return. If you're going after somebody, specifically a wide receiver one, again, the name I keep throwing out there is Jalen Waddle. You can try to ask and see if it's possible, but it's going to be tough to bring back that value, especially if you're not giving, two of your best players, which is Aaron Jones and Eckler, in return for it. Let's see here. Let me go ahead. Where the heck is it? Okay. How do you feel about Josh Jacobs moving forward? How do I feel? I mean, look, ultimately, the running back position for a majority of us is going to be a little bit tricky because touchdowns are so dependent for these players. Like, a lot of us sacrificed the first 8 weeks of our season only just to now have that incredible game from Joe Mixon, right? So there are going to be blow-up games like that kind of even out the stat line by the end of the year. But again, I think Josh Jacobs is going to be this inconsistent kind of option to an extent for the remainder of the year. He's going to have these blow-up games where he scores touchdowns. He's going to have games where he's inactive in the receiving game and doesn't score touchdowns. But it's the balance of between the two. I'm perfectly fine expecting, top 12 upside rest of the way. But again, you just have to hope that the touchdowns are there. Because if they're not, he's not a valuable prospect because only getting yourself 60 yards, a couple catches, that's 8 to 10 points and a half PPR. When you need those 6-point influxes at the end of the day, which is definitely tough to acquire. But again, I'm not giving up on Josh Jacobs as of right now. Tex says Andrews/Aaron Jones for Chubb, Debo, and Pat Freiermuth. Yes, I would take that. Give me Chubb side. Thank you. Trojan says 36. Okay, Trojan's 3659 says I'm thinking about packaging Kyler Murray, Ramondre Stevenson, Ertz, Dillon, and Montgomery. Okay. Still have Fields, Goddard, Barkley on my squad. Thinking for Derrick Henry, ? Thoughts? I don't know if you'll be able to acquire Derrick Henry for that because thinking about it, Trojan, you're going to have to give away a couple pieces, yes, but you can't give away a 5-for-1 because that team that has Derrick Henry will not have the bench capacity to be able to drop all of his players on the bench and acquire the players that you're setting in his direction. So if you're going to send Ramondre Stevenson, Kyler Murray, and Ertz for him, I mean, I think you could get away with that. I mean, if you do end up getting away with that, then by all means, we're in a good spot because you have Fields, you have Goddard, you have Barkley. You bring in Derrick Henry, who has the easiest strength of schedule from weeks 15 through 17. And from the way he's playing as of late, doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. You can definitely make that trade and make a move there. But going 5-for-1 is probably not going to be in the cards. Brian Daniels says, sitting at 8-1 currently, and I've been streaming at quarterback, have trades for Burrow or Tua, who's better rest season. I think we were talking about this earlier. My uncertainty on the matter in regards between the two rest of the season leads me to believe that in my mind's eye, I already know that the answer is Tua. And it's slowly but surely getting there. So as of right now, if someone was telling me, Andrew, who would you rather have rest of the way, Burrow or Tua? I haven't even looked at strength of schedule, right? But off the top of my head, because of what we're seeing within these offenses, specifically with Ja'Marr Chase most likely going to be out for a little bit of time here. And if Ja'Marr Chase comes back and isn't healthy, I think there's so much risk implicated in that, in the value of Burrow, that it leads me in the direction of trying to go for Tua. But again, it is tough, man. It's close. All right, let's see here. Are Ramondre and Damian Pierce starting 1 and 2 rest of season? Yes, absolutely, Hazard. Tyler Boyd says, oh, sorry, not Tyler Boyd says, Jacob Irving says, Tyler Boyd and Dak for Higgins in a full PPR. I'm 4-5, and my QB is Geno. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. I think, Geno is probably perfectly fine, top 12 rest of the way. So you can get away with that kind of trade. We just got to hope that Higgins is getting a little bit more utilization with this offense. Buy or sell Brandon Ayuk. At this point, with all the pieces that this offense has, it would be difficult for me to say buy him. I would, okay, this is what I would say. I'm not buying him. I'm not going out and actively trading for him, but if I have him on roster, I'm not selling him either. I think I want to hold and just wait one more week. I just want to see what this offense looks like against the Chargers, because I know it's an advantageous matchup for the wide receiver position, and I'm fairly comfortable with the idea that Ayuk has another good week here. And with that, at that point, when you put together 3 or 4 consecutive really good performances, then I'd be willing to move him. But right now, I just kind of want to wait and see before we make any rash decisions regarding him. Blake says, oh my God, I'm glad that you're streaming. Can I drop Isaiah Pacheco, Pitts, and possibly Deion Jackson? Pacheco, yeah, that should have been dropped probably 2 weeks ago, but either way, that's fine. Pitts, I'd probably say probably not. And Deion Jackson, that is going to be one that we're going to have to figure out as the week progresses, considering he got a knee injury during the game, then tried to kind of get back into the game, then missed the entirety of the fourth quarter, or at least the last 14 minutes of the game. Leads me to believe that Deion Jackson most likely is not going to be active this week. And even if he is, it may be a running back rotation. So I think the two that you could drop here are Pacheco and Deion Jackson. You'll be pretty comfortable doing so. Pitts, on the other hand, again, he's getting red zone targets. He had a lot of them this last weekend and unfortunately wasn't able to come down with the touchdown. He has been able to get himself enough red zone targets over the last couple of weeks that, yes, he's an inconsistent tight end, but he's a tight end that has upside ability. So I'm not willing to drop him just yet. Lazard is always 15 plus points. I guess in a full PPR, probably 15 points. In a half PPR, which I typically play in, or I do my rankings in with a weekly basis, he's relatively lower. I think he's about like 11 or 12 points per week on average over the course of the season since week 2. So yeah, I mean, look, he's great. Again, he's scoring touchdowns every time he plays, which is fantastic. Time to drop Pittman. I wouldn't say drop him, but if you can sell him, that's great. If you can't sell him, then yes, at that point, yeah, I'm okay with dropping him. Is Jeff Wilson's performance this week a sign of things to come? Yes, it should be. The fact that he outsnapped Raheem Mostert, the fact that he was a more efficient runner and also was a huge threat in the receiving game leads me to believe that he's already overtaken him, and it just takes a couple more weeks here of those kind of performances, and it's his job, which is crazy. I mean, we went a couple weeks ago from saying, you know what, with Christian McCaffrey coming in, he's a droppable option. And then 8 days later, he gets traded, and now he's in contention for being the starting running back for another organization who runs the exact same offense that he's comfortable with and that he's actually, going to be able to produce in. It's fantastic. We love to see it. Let's see here. What's your thoughts on Likely? I think he's droppable. People were talking about him earlier. I think he's a droppable option. Again, they're going on bye week, and Mark Andrews will return. And when he does, I don't expect to see Isaiah Likely getting much of a receiving role within this offense in the long run. So, yeah, I think he's droppable. You can't get Waddle. I mean, maybe you can. Again, here's the thing. if I tell you to go get a player, it does not mean you'll be able to get him, right? Because if somebody, let's say for example, came to me in my league and said, "Hey Andrew, I want Jalen Waddle. I'll give you X, Y, or Z players," right? It purely depends on what else I have on roster, right? So the overall idea of asking me, Andrew, what can I get for this? I am not the decision maker at the end of the day. The decision maker is the team that you're trading with, ultimately, right? So if they're not comfortable with it, regardless of how much they know about football, it doesn't matter, right? Because they are the final decision maker within the trade. You're not trading with a robot that just automatically accepts or declines like in Madden or something. So again, you never know. You just have to go and find a team that is desperate enough for an alternate position, who needs quarterback, who needs running back, who needs tight end so desperately that they're willing to give away one of their better wide receiver options. Just to confirm that you said I shouldn't do Jacobs and Myers. Yes, I wouldn't do it. I would keep Jacobs and Myers, to be totally honest. Because, again, like I was mentioning, Ibrahim, this is the problem. Swift is a problem. And I don't want to imply that problem onto your team. Unless, of course, you're 7-2 and you can afford to wait 4 weeks. You know what I mean? That'd be the only reason why I would ever take it. Should I trade Boyd and DJ Moore for Keenan Allen? Okay, Uriel. If your wide receiver position is currently starting both Boyd and DJ Moore right now, if you were to trade him for Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen doesn't play in week 10 or 11, in week 11 in week 10 or 11, if he doesn't play in both of those weeks, who starts a wide receiver? If you can confidently give me two other options that you can start a wide receiver at that point, then I have no problem making that trade. But until then, it's not worth it. Let's see here. Okay, a couple more questions that were sent in. Let me go ahead and address these real quick. So after Trojan, we had Brian Daniels, okay, and then we had Crooks. Crooks sends in a question, says, is Boyd for Stevenson a good trade? There's no way you'd be able to make that trade. If you can trade away Tyler Boyd for Ramondre Stevenson, it's an absolute great trade. It is the best possible trade that could ever exist in any sort of outcome. So I don't know how you would get away with that, but if you could, go for it. But Stevenson's putting up too many points for that to be an actual reality. Mustafa says, what does this say? How do you feel about Michael Pittman Jr. rest of the season? And should I start Amari Cooper over? Yes, Amari Cooper absolutely is going to get the start over him for the rest of the way. As for Michael Pittman, like I was telling people earlier, if you have to drop him, you drop him. But I don't trust this offense to be winning games in the future here. Of course, they're all going to put forth the effort to try to win these games. It doesn't mean they'll be able to accomplish said goal because they're just not good enough at the quarterback position. They can't run the ball. And, there's not enough speed within this offense to justify the kind of scheme that they want to currently run. Let's see here. Anonymous user says, last play, Drake 7-yard touchdown or 7 yards loss, saved me by 0.1 points. Okay, Anonymous, here's the difference, right? If in fact there is just be careful, okay? This is what I don't want to kill your vibe, but just be careful. There could be a stat correction by the end of the week. I don't know. I think if you play on ESPN, they're far more likely to occur within a given week in comparison to a Yahoo format or an NFL.com format. But just be very careful of a stat correction that swings that entire matchup. It would happen by Tuesday, so be careful. Tex says, DK or Debo in that trade? Question mark. I have Henry, AJ Brown, and Evans. Tex, I got to go remind myself. So you had Aaron Jones, AJ I would rather have DK over Debo rest of the way. Yeah, I'd rather have DK there. Thank you. Stanley says, any of the players to pick up in a half PPR league, 12-man team for a running back. What do you mean by that, Stanley? Any player to pick up? I don't know what's available. Look, this doesn't make sense to me. How are you asking me if there's any players to pick up? I don't even know who's on your waivers, my man. Can you give me some names? Because that would definitely help me out. Trust Najee rest of the season? No. I do not trust Najee rest of the season. I would say that Najee Harris is probably my number 24 ranked running back rest of the way. And that's being generous. I'm hoping that I'm undervaluing him and that he'll break out and become the guy I expected him to be this year, similar to what he was his rookie season. But, we've seen enough to understand what is going on here within the offense. Total Chat says, what is that even? What are you on about? What if you owned the Galactic Overlords and everyone you touch turned into... What? I don't know what you're talking about, man. You're zooted. You're completely cooked right now. That's hilarious. JK says, I need a tight end this week. I have Waller and Hurst. Should I drop one? Yeah, I'm okay dropping Hayden Hurst. Can you go get Greg Dulcich? Can you go get Kate Otten? Can you go get Cole Kmet? Either of those three guys, that is what I'm looking for. Traded Juju and Jonathan Taylor for Jacobs. W in a full PPR or L? Man. If Jonathan Taylor is going to be as I expect him to be for the rest of the year and this offense doesn't look great, I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly fine under that assumption. A lot of risk, but as of right now, at least you get out from underneath the Jonathan Taylor mess that is the Colts. Amari Cooper, only good at home. Look at his stats. All right, let's look at it, Justin. Amari Cooper. Where art thou? Okay, let's look at this. Here we go. Boom. Okay, so I'm looking at this year. That's fine. He scored all of his touchdowns at home, but what about last year? Last year at home, 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. Away on the road. Yeah, last year in 2021, on the road, had... what is that? That's 18 more catches, 200 more receiving yards, and just as many touchdowns. So if we're just talking about in terms of a Browns perspective, he's better at home. I don't think that's enough actual data to be relevant, quite frankly. I understand that he hasn't done anything on the road in the 4 games or the 3 games that he's played on the road, but it really doesn't bother me in any sort of capacity at all. I think it's not enough of an expanded statistic to actually matter. Like if you told me this and he had been actually irrelevant for the last, I don't know, let's say 2-3 years at home in comparison, or sorry, if he had been irrelevant on the road for his entire career, then we'd have, a question in mind. But considering it's just only this year and they've only played 3 away games, I'm not too worried about it. All right, let's see here. Cream sends in a question. Okay, what is this? J Will? Yeah, we'll get to J Will. Godwin, St. Brown, start Palmer or Hardman over 1. At this point, it's going to be hard not to, right? It's going to be hard not to. We'll get our wide receiver video ranked by Wednesday, so you'll have an answer to that question by Wednesday. Cream says, I have Deion Jackson and JT. Do I need to look at other Colts running backs too? I mean, at this point, yes. I think you'd probably have to look at Jordan Wilkins and or Zach Moss, which kind of makes it a little bit of a mess there within the backfield. Again, I posted a waiver wire video earlier today talking about those 2 guys in specific and why I'm going after them. Is Burrow and Lazard for Carr, Ayuk, either Duvernay or Myers? I don't think that's worth it. I just keep Burrow and Lazard rest of the way here, Mike. Now, if you're getting Burrow and Lazard for this combination, that's fine by me. I'll take the Burrow and Lazard part of that. Rest of the way, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have Wilson and Jeudy. Thinking about trading for Amon-Ra. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that. If you can get rid of one of them and bring back Amon-Ra, I'm full in on that idea. Hold JT if I'm 7-2. Other running backs are Walker, Cook, and Mostert. I guess you could, but the issue is, again, I don't expect Jonathan Taylor to be the Jonathan Taylor of last year at any point. If he does, that'd be great, but I don't expect him to be. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards kind of selling him in comparison to holding on to him right now. Higbee, Schultz, and Waller, pick one rest of the season. Out of the group, I prefer Schultz. Is Brandon Cooks droppable? Raymond, to be honest, you probably could drop him. Or, I mean, look, if he goes back to the organization and continues to play for the Houston Texans, how much value does it really have? I think he's already established what his value kind of sits at. He'll score a touchdown once every couple weeks, And even at that point, it's not worth it. So I think he is droppable, considering I doubt that they're going to cut him anytime soon. How do you feel about CeeDee Lamb, especially with the potential of OBJ joining the Cowboys? I don't think it in any way affects CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb does not get enough targets for another receiver to impact his play. He only gets about 6 or 7 targets with Dak anyway. At most, we'll see himself like 8 or 9. So I don't think that OBJ's overall presence will make a difference. If anything, it makes the offense more of a well-functioning offense in general, to where they can get into the red zone more often and score more touchdowns, if anything. So I think his presence actually helps, considering, of course, he's not really a heavily targeted option within the offense. Okay, a couple more donations were sent in. Jabo says, in a PPR, let's see where Jabo. AJ Brown for Saquon / Jacobs. Wait, traded AJ Brown for Saquon / Jacobs. And Brian Robinson for D-Hop. What? How'd you do that? Look, this is what I'm talking about, guys. No matter what I suggest, some people in your league are just crazy, and I don't understand it. And really, any advice I give is probably irrelevant, because in terms of trades, really, the only determining factor is what that crazy person in your league is willing to go ahead and do. And I don't know what they want to do. They've got different, trains of thoughts than I do, and it's really interesting. Is Melvin Gordon droppable? I think so, Keone. Markel Adams says, I'm sitting at 8-1. Would you drop Rondell Robinson for OBJ? Yes, I would. Absolutely. Other wide receivers are Jefferson, Waddle, and yes, I would. I would drop Rondell Robinson for OBJ right now. Let's see here. AIWGS says, I'm 8-1, 12-team full PPR. I have Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, Hill, Chase. Okay, so how is this a 12-man team? I mean, how is it a 12-man league? How do you have these players? Because theoretically, okay, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Jamar Chase this year and Saquon Barkley were both going in the first round. And then Christian McCaffrey was also in the top. What? How is this? What is this? I don't know how you have this team. It's kind of irrelevant. Quite frankly, you're winning the championship, and I don't think you need to make any changes. If you want to trade for Amari Cooper, you can. I don't think you have to at any sort of capacity, because you have Hurts, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Hill, Chase, Kelsey, Walker. What difference? I mean, what difference does it make? If you want Cooper, go for it. It doesn't make a difference. I don't think you're going to lose a single game here, or you shouldn't. If you do, it's because you had the worst luck that's ever existed in the fantasy realm. Thoughts on Garrett Wilson rest of the season? I mean, at this point, yes, Abdullah. I think he's an RB2. I mean, a wide receiver 2. The rate in which they're passing the ball and effectively passing the ball in his direction gives me a lot more confidence in what Zach Wilson is capable of. Luckily, these second-year quarterbacks are starting to figure it out after the first month of the year. So, at this or first month of the season. So I'm all in on him being a wide receiver 2. Again, there's a reason why we jumped back on ship last week, because he had a huge performance. He was the number 1 wide receiver I mentioned in last Monday's waiver wire targets video. If he was still available, you would go ahead and pick him up and return to it as such. Would you drop Higbee for OBJ right now? Yes, I would. Again, that's under the assumption that you have somebody else there at tight end. Troy, let me see what you have here. Troy says, Andrew, should I trade Diggs for Tua, Debo, and Godwin, or Barkley for Swift, Fields, and Gabe Davis? Okay, so considering you have Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, if you were to bring in Tua, Debo, and Godwin for Diggs, I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't like the other trade as much. I'll take the Tua one. I have Kamara, Patterson, Ayuk, Judy. No, I'm perfectly fine with this first trade. Again, it's mainly because I know that honestly, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady cannot help you in any sort of capacity, to be honest. And at least by bringing in Debo and Godwin, they'll pretty much be your starters. And at least at that point, you can move Ayuk and Judy and maybe even DJ Moore and legitimately get an upgrade at a flex position by sending a 2-for-1, 3-for-1 in some sort of capacity there. Let's see here. Yeah, all first round guys in a 12-team league. I know, it's crazy. I've seen some crazy stuff, man. I've seen some crazy stuff. Is Christian Kirk someone that you have high hopes on the rest of the season? I mean, we had high hopes for him, when the season began. and he met those overall high hopes, and then kind of was a little bit inconsistent. I think he's a really solid wide receiver too, and I think if you have him on roster, you should be confident in his overall potential for the rest of the way. I'm not too worried about him. I think, like, in comparison to someone like Gabe Davis, right? Because considering the name is just here, Ayuk, DJ Moore, Judy, I think he's more valuable than those guys right now, rest of the way. Let's see here. Is offering Palmer, Judy, and Foreman for Waddle a decent offer? The guy has Thielen, Sutton, and Dillon and his starting lineup, so I feel it's an upgrade all around for him. Or is that a low ball? I don't think that's a low ball. I think you're offering 3 startable players. One that gets to play against Atlanta this week again and has a really favorable rest of season schedule. Judy honestly has looked really good in the last couple weeks that he's played with Russell. And Palmer, again, even though he's a right now guy, could still be a determining factor because of the fantasy points that he's put up recently and over the course of the season. And you can express the idea that, hey, Mike Williams is not coming back for a while. And I honestly think you can get away with this trade, Jeff. But again, just depends on whether that guy is comfortable with what he has on roster currently rest of the way. Olave and Godwin for Kenneth Walker. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Again, you got to have wide receiver depth in order to pull something off like that, but it's tough. Master says, I hate fantasy football. I scored the second highest points in 3 weeks in a row, and I take 3 losses. So sick. Yeah, look, this is what I've suggested to people who play in those kind of leagues. The most competitive leagues right now in fantasy football are leagues in which you play 2 people every single week. And what I mean by that is you play yourself and you play the entire league all at once. So this is how it's technically expressed. So, for example, I play you, Master. Okay, let's say it's week 1. I play you this week. Okay, we do a head-on-head matchup. Whoever ends up winning in terms of total points scored gets a W in the column. The other one gets the L. But then also at the same time, you play your entire 12-team league. So if in fact you're within the top 6 in scoring within that given week, okay, technically you get a W. If you're in the bottom 6 of the top 12, you get an L. So you can go 2-0 in a week, 1-1 in a week, and 0-2 in a week, depending on your performance. So in the case of these 3 scenarios where you lost 3 consecutive weeks by very low amount of points, even though you were second highest in those 3 weeks, you would technically break even in every single one of those weeks. Because in terms of total fantasy points put forward, you'd be up there. Now, you could play a completely different league where you just don't even play head-to-head matchup. Whoever by the end of the season has the most fantasy points total by week 17 wins the whole league. I've played in those leagues. Those are fun. Now, you can try one of those with your friends, but I just think it's less of a competitive, like, jab-worthy, shit-talking kind of experience because you're never playing anybody in a week-to-week basis. But at least the second or the first way that I was talking about in terms of having 2 potential games per week, I think it's probably the best way to combat those kind of unlucky circumstance. Should I hold on to Likely? I have Njoku as my tight end 1. No, Likely should be dropped. Abdullah, you should go after anybody by the name of Dulcich, Komet, or Otten. Let me go ahead. Let's see here. Jabo sends in a question, says, LMAO, I meant AJ Brown for Saquon. Okay, cool. That's perfectly fine. If you get Saquon for AJ Brown, that's fantastic. 2 separate trades. I have J-Jet, I have Debo, I have Chubb, ETN, Saquon, and Jacobs. Do I trade Jacobs and Brian Robinson for D-Hop? I understand now. This all makes sense. So, if you're going ahead and you're trading away Jacobs and Brian Robinson for DeAndre Hopkins, if it's a full PPR scoring format, I'm all in on that idea because you already have Chubb, Etienne, and Saquon, who are significantly higher in my mind rest of the season than that of course, Jacobs. So yeah, I'm all in on it because D-Hop at that point would be your number 2 wide receiver outside of J-Jet. So yeah, let's do the trade. Jordy, let's see what you had here, my man. Jordy says, one more question. My man, let's see here. What do we have? Actually, there's a lot more down here. One more question. Wide receivers are Sutton and Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. My running backs are Cook, Walker, Michael Carter, and Gus Edwards. I have Lamar and Fields as my half PPR. Should I ride my squad or look to trade? Number 1 wants Lamar. If you can theoretically trade away Lamar Jackson, keep Fields, and upgrade Lamar into any sort of wide receiver play, because I don't think we can rely upon these guys. Specifically, Pittman, I can't rely upon. But I think Sutton could be good in certain circumstances, depending on matchup. But considering we can't rely upon these guys and the inconsistency of Amon-Ra, if you can flip Lamar for one of his best receivers, I'm okay with this. I don't have a problem with it. I don't mind running Fields the rest of the way. I think his 5 consecutive weeks here of performances has given me enough confidence to trust them the rest of the way. Caleb sends in a question. Thank you, Caleb. I appreciate that. It says Cook and Godwin for King Henry. I'm fine with that. Yeah, absolutely. Give me that. Stanley says, my bench is Hardman. Okay, cool. All right. Any trade ideas to look for? Stanley, what I was asking for before in specific was because you had mentioned who should I go pick up off waivers. I don't know who you have on waivers, but in terms of specifics of making a trade, Hardman should at this point, Hardman could be started as your flex, but if you're going to move him, you take Hardman, you take Gabriel Davis, and you go try to move him for a wide receiver 2 of the capacity of someone. I mean, if we're going to move both those guys, I mean, they have actual, like, legit value. If you're going to move them, maybe try to go ahead. It may be a little bit risky, though. I'm trying to think if it's actually worth the trade. Because what my initial thought is, if you can move Mecole Hardman and Gabriel Davis and somehow go bring back guys of the caliber of a Marquise Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, DK Metcalf. Who else is a name that I kind of like? I mean, again, we're trading pretty much 2 wide receiver 2s there, right? At this point, specifically as of late. So if we're actually making that move, you got to get some good value in return for them. Yeah, if you can bring back Christian Kirk, DK Metcalfs, T. Higgins, Amon-Ra St. Browns, I think that'd be fun. I think it's honestly possible that you could get away with that. I thought about mentioning Debo, but considering his hamstring injury, and I don't know what his current capacity of health is, I probably lean away from that. And knowing that Marquise Hollywood Brown will be coming back in week 11, that could be something that I'm interested in, especially considering how much that offense is going to have to rely upon passing the ball for the rest of the year here. Let's see here. Markel Adams says, no clue how I'm 6-3 in my league. Having quarterback troubles, I have Brady and Mariota. Would you take a shot at Deshaun Watson? Yes, I would. Absolutely. Without a doubt in my mind, Markel Adams, I would. I think the whole experiment on Deshaun Watson is going to be determined in week 13, which is really, it's right around the corner. In week 13, he plays against Houston. It is a revenge quote unquote game. I don't even know if you like to categorize it as that, but at this point, it will be a game in which it is competitive enough to determine whether he will be worth anything in fantasy without even having to play him in week 13. So I don't mind picking him up, holding him, stashing him. Until then, let's see what he's made of. If he's actually a good quarterback still, and if he's the Deshaun Watson of old, he could legitimately win you a championship, because the Deshaun Watson of old is a guy that could, on a weekly basis, be a top 5 quarterback consistently with rushing upside, which very rarely you can find in the league. Tarek sends in a question. Santana says, in a 10-team league, I'm 4-5. I have Brady as my quarterback along with Dak Prescott. I have Henry, I have Lenny, I have Aaron Jones. My wide receivers are Higgins, Moore, Lazard, Deontay, Goddard at tight end. Thoughts on any trade targets / packages? Yeah, at this point, I would be very comfortable trying to go and find whoever has AJ Dillon in your league and trade for him. Because at this point, Henry and Dak don't go anywhere. Higgins doesn't go anywhere. Neither does Goddard. I think so. I mean, Lazard could technically be a tradable option, but you might just want to keep him as your wide receiver 2 for the rest of the way here. I think if you can, I think the pieces that are technically up for grabs that you can technically move to make upgrades would be Lenny, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Brady. Now, I'm not saying to go trade Lenny for AJ Dillon. I don't think that's a good idea in any sort of capacity. But if you can go ahead and move like a Deontay Johnson for him, or I mean, I don't even think you can do DJ Moore technically. It's kind of interesting because your team doesn't have that much depth, even though you're in a 10-team league. I would have thought you would have had a little bit more depth, but technically maybe injuries maybe rinsed you across the board. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, if you started running back 3 consecutive rounds, this would be the team that you start with. Never mind, you're fine. Yeah, no, this looks about right. Because if you start RB, then you went Higgins, then you went Moore, then Deontay, then you went for the tight end, and then quarterback. Yeah, never mind, it makes sense. Looks like a normal team. Yeah, at this point, your main point of interest would probably be to go and acquire A.J. Dillon somehow, some way. Cream says, Kenyon Drake and Jonathan Taylor for Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah, I'll take Ramondre Stevenson there. Thank you. Heat131 says, I was offered Kamara and Debo for CeeDee Lamb and Kenneth Walker. Kamara and Debo for CeeDee Lamb and Kenneth Walker. No, I would rather have Kenneth Walker and CeeDee Lamb rest of the way. Is that a good trade in a 10-team PPR? I have Hurts, Henry, Dalvin Cook. Yeah, honestly, I think I'd just rather keep what you have. Considering I know what the Debo Samuel injury is, and it's a hamstring, I already have CeeDee Lamb significantly higher than him in terms of rest of season rankings. The difference between Kamara and Walker isn't enough for me to consider making that. So yeah, I'd rather just have the CeeDee Lamb and Walker side if we're making a move here. Crooks says, trade Lamar and keep Fields rest of the season. Yes, I'm perfectly fine with that. XDS4325 says, in a 10-team standard league, I'm 5-4. Fields, Dak, Diggs, Hill, St. Brown, Palmer, Deontay. Okay, let's see here. Deontay, Christian McCaffrey, Mixon, Paul. Okay, you got a very interesting team here across the board. Trying to sell one of my quarterbacks, maybe Joe. Any other moves and or targets to potentially make? Okay, so if you're able to, what do you mean maybe Joe? Trying to sell one QB, maybe, oh, as in Joe Mixon. Aha, I understand. So if you're going to sell Joe Mixon off of that week, you have to sell him like he's a top 5 running back, straight up. So you have to go after Chubb, Saquon, McCaffrey, Henry, Eckler. That's it. Nothing less. Especially if you're also going to be giving Fields with that or Dak Prescott with that. So I'm fine with selling Christian McCaffrey. You just got to sell him as what he is. You got to sell him as a top 5 back. Otherwise, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. As for any other trades you could potentially make, St. Brown's fine. Diggs, Hill are fine. Palmer is just a swing option. Deontay is technically, not really a playable option going forward. Everett can be moved. Pollard's fine just in case for depth purposes. Yeah, I don't think you need to make any moves overall. I think this is a really good team over. In terms of depth, you have it across the board. I think Everett can be moved if, in fact, someone is in desperate need of a tight end. But moving a quarterback with one of these positional players, whether it is wide receiver and or running back, is not a bad idea under the assumption that someone needs both those combinations and is going to give you top-tier talent in exchange for it. Anvesh sent in a question. Let me see your Anvesh. Where are we at here, my man? No Anvesh. Let me go ahead and refresh my chat because for some reason his name is not in here. Here we go, Anvesh. He says, are you concerned about Herbert's production going forward? Are we talking about Justin Herbert? If that's the question, then yes, I'm already concerned about it. He doesn't look like himself. Yes, he's been injured for the last couple of weeks. If you go listen to the press conference that the head coach for the Chargers made, it pretty much confirms our concerns in regards to his injury and that he's been playing through that rib injury, and that's why he hasn't looked great. And obviously the wide receivers that surround him are not great. So yeah, it's not a fantastic position for him, and it is unfortunate, but he's playing through it. Herman Vasquez, let's see, Herman. What do we have in terms of a question? Herman, I don't see a question from you. If you can do me a favor, send that question into the chat. It'd be greatly appreciated. Greek Stallion says, Tua or Kyler Murray rest of the season? I would take Tua. 6-point per passing touchdown league. Thank you. Trade JT for Najee Harris and Amari Cooper? I guess you could. I mean, I don't know about bringing in Najee Harris, but if that's the best, combination you can get in exchange for it, I'm fine with it. Again, that is under the assumption that JT and this entire Colts organization are tanking for the number 1 overall pick. Because why would you bring in Jeff Saturday, who has no coaching experience in the NFL, to be the head coach of your team? You fire the guy who was your effective offensive coordinator, and you don't have anybody on that team that is ever called to play in the National Football League as a play caller on a consistent basis. So as of right now, it is real risky. Drake London droppable? Yes. I believe he is. Would you do Dak and Pollard for Swift and whatever quarterback they have? Would you do Dak and Pollard for Swift and whatever quarterback they have? My plans is to pick up Watson. If you're trading away Pollard for Swift, I think it's so risky to go for Swift at any sort of capacity. My issue with trading away Pollard is because I actually think that Pollard is going to be the running back that leads this backfield. I really do think so. I don't even know if I want to trade away Pollard at all. I mean, look, considering your roster stacked XD, it's fine to make that trade because you can very easily go out of your way and wait a couple weeks here, end up getting a little bit of I guess you could probably get a couple good performances out of these players until DeAndre Swift comes back, plays in your flex position, and then you're fine. But I don't know, man. I don't know about trading Paul. I want to wait one more week. Let me see what he does against Green Bay. I know it might burn you in the end, but if it's me and it's my team, I don't think I want to give away Pollard right now. I know what kind of potential he holds, and that's what's that's what's causing the hesitation. It's his potential and DeAndre Swift's injury. That is the combination. Troy says, Godwin or Juju? Give me Juju rest of the season. I mean, Juju's been really good as of late, and Godwin can't seem to catch any sort of pass in the red zone from Tom Brady. And that combination itself, I mean, what are we doing, right? The offense just doesn't conform to anything that we expected it to be. And yeah, Juju's just getting way more and more targets every single week, and I'm comfortable with just rolling him. Would you drop Eno Benjamin or hold him for a little longer? No, I'd drop him. I think the performance that James Conner put forth in terms of snap counts, in terms of touches, is pretty much what we expected him to look like. I love Pollard so much, but Jerry comments are scaring me off. Yeah, I know. Jerry's comments are very much so impactful because we know how much of a pull he has within the organization. But what Jerry wants more than anything in the world is to win another championship. And if he wants to do so, they have to use Tony Pollard. And I'm sure they've had that conversation already. Hey, listen, we understand you spent a lot of money on Zeke Elliott, but you're going to have to take an L on that, and you're going to let us play Tony Pollard because he will actually lead us into the playoffs and give us a far better chance, especially the way our defense is playing. So that's just my only hesitation on the matter. All right, Stanley says, is Jaylen Warren worth holding as a stash? I think he's worth holding only under... Okay, yeah, look, here's the thing. In terms of your team, right? Hardman and Hardman, Palmer are two guys that... And even Rondale Moore. All three of those guys can be moved right now, right? Mainly because Palmer's on a ticking time... Yeah, Palmer and Rondale Moore, both of them are only benefiting from the fact that there's other wide receivers in that offense injured. So Rondale Moore and Palmer can be sold. Claypool, again, he's a wait and see kind of guy considering he doesn't have much value right now. Singletary has value, but only as like a low-end RB2. Freiermuth has value as a top 6 upside tight end. Gabe Davis, again, it really will depend on what Josh Allen's injury looks like. So at that point, Hardman is the guy that you look at and you think, can he continue this? If he does, fantastic. We'll keep him. We'll have him as our flex. But if you want to just sell on it because there's so many touchdowns that are implicated in his overall production over the course of the last couple weeks, and if he doesn't score more touchdowns in the future, it'd be a perfect time right now in my mind to just sell high on Mecole Hardman. So yes, I still do believe in regards to your team, Stanley, Jaylen Warren's a perfectly fine keep. But I mean, what does he present to you? Even if, for example, Najee Harris went down with an injury, and he wasn't going to play, Jaylen Warren will still be probably an RB2 within the given week. He probably won't score a touchdown, but he'll get yardage. It's not going to be a relevant enough option still because the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is just not great enough. Yeah, it's nothing that we can hang our hat on and trust. All right, Jake Thompson says, in a 14-team league, Jimmy G, Carr, Henry, Cook, Wilson Jr., okay, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Kareem Hunt. We have Evans, Gabriel Davis, Lockett, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, Everett, Waller, Hill. Should I make any moves? So considering you have Jimmy G and Carr, Jimmy G can start for you probably the rest of the way here. Henry Cook are your 1 and 2. You're fine there. Evans and Lockett are your 1 and 2. until you get Hollywood Brown back, who's your flex. At this point, the movable options, Rondell Moore, Gabe Davis, Kareem Hunt, Everett, Hill, these are your movable options. If you're going to make an upgrade anywhere, I think it's probably at your RB3 flex option. But quite frankly, you have Jeff Wilson Jr. and you do have Hollywood Brown. And unless you're going to move those two pieces in specific, it would be tough to make a huge play of an upgrade, especially considering how inconsistent guys like Gabriel Davis have been and how difficult it'll be to, in exchange, sell them at this moment. So you might have to wait for some of those guys to have a little bit more of a consistent streak of games to then sell them for a better upgrade there for guys like Miles Sanders or something of that extent. But at this point, I'm pretty comfortable at what you have, because we know that once those, once specifically Hollywood Brown comes back, you're in a pretty good position at flex. All right, Herman Vasquez says, in a 12-team full PPR, should I trade Aaron Rodgers for Russell Wilson and Hurst? Should I trade Aaron Rodgers for Russell Wilson and Hurst for Dulcich? Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't love the idea of going after Russell Wilson, but I'm going to hope that you have something on waivers that could end up being a decent option to, kind of play outside of him, just in case. But I do like the idea of making that Hayden Hurst for Greg Dulcich trade. Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple more questions. We've been here for about almost 2 hours, and that's pretty much typically where I like to cut it off on Monday nights, because I got to go immediately start working on my running back rankings video, collecting all those stats, watching a little bit of game film via NFL Plus. I don't know if you guys have checked that out, but they got a pretty good service there. Not a hashtag ad, but anything of that nature is obviously always fun to watch those games back, obviously in the line of work that I do. Outside of that, if you guys haven't yet already, do me a favor, click the like button down below. Also, you guys can see this to the left, the left of me technically on your side of the screen. It's Prize Picks. If you guys haven't checked them out today, you can absolutely do so. Play together, of course, under the idea that you're picking more or less in a given player statistic. Earlier today, I did not find much success. This weekend, I did, right? My Zach Ertz hit more on every single one of those overall entries. And so did Trevor Lawrence, and so did Jalen Waddle. And those guys really delivered for me in terms of bringing home some money for Andrew. But in terms of some of the other ones, like, of course, expecting Mac Jones to throw another pick. He had 7 consecutive games in doing so. The 1 week I want to jump on the bandwagon, of course, he doesn't throw a pick. But either way, pick more or less on a given player statistic. Check them out today. There's a link down in the description. If, in fact, you want to sign up, make a first-time deposit, be sure to use promo code Andrew, because when you make that first-time deposit, you'll be given a first-time deposit match up to $100. So if you deposit 10, you'll be given 10. You deposit 20, you'll be given 20, up to $100. Check that out today. Thank you very much. All right, a couple more questions here, and then we're going to have to bow out here. All right, let me go to this point, and then I'm just going to answer everything going downward. Here we go. After Herman Vasquez was Zakaria says, trade Murray, D-Hop, Higgins for Hurts and JJ. If you have enough wide receiver depth to be able to afford to lose D-Hop and Higgins, I'm okay with this. So if you have somebody else that's a solid wide receiver too, I'm perfectly fine with that, because I really do believe, Zakaria, that there is a significant difference between Murray and Hurts, and I'm willing to make this trade because of that. Name here says, I have Judy, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Jacoby Myers, and OBJ. Should I drop any of these for Palmer, Thielen, Rondell Moore, Zay Jones, Garrett Wilson? Yes, Garrett Wilson for sure. And Mecole Hardman. Okay, so of the group, are we dropping any of those players for... Okay, so my only suggestion, legitimately, would be to drop OBJ for Garrett Wilson. That's it. That's the only thing that I would... That's the only thing I would do. Asher says, what do you think about dropping Wilson for Watson? Thinking about streaming Murray. Wilson for Watson? Streaming... So yeah, so if you're going to drop Russell Wilson for Deshaun Watson and you're going to stream Kyler Murray, yeah, if that's the implication, then yes, I'm perfectly fine with that, Asher. Ibrahim says, I know that you know not... what does this say? Okay, yeah, Pittsburgh plays the Panthers on Thursday of week 11. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah, if it's a week 11 question, I don't know what you're referring to. yeah, I can't even answer the first part of that question, Ibrahim. I can only answer what are my thoughts on Lazard now that Dobbs is out. Again, Lazard was good regardless of whether or not Dobbs was active. So Lazard is going to continue to be a great option within this offense. I have no doubt about that in my mind. Ravi says, I'm 3-6. My team is Kyler, Etienne, Khalil Herbert, J-Rob, D-Hop, Gabriel Davis, Juju, Brandon Cooks. Any trade suggestions of the team that you have? Yeah, I think at this point, it would probably serve you best to try to get another running back that we can at least rely upon to some sort of capacity. But Ravi, it's going to be tough. I think man, I don't want to move ETN because he's really a 20-point guy rest of the way here. I mean, that's what he's looking like, or at least been able to consistently produce as of the last 2 weeks here. Brandon Cooks has no value. Gabriel Davis is super inconsistent. I think your best case scenario is to legitimately try to trade away DeAndre Hopkins to bring back a wide receiver and a running back. And if you're able to do so, that's probably going to lead to a little bit more success than what you're dealing with right now, because having to rely upon J-Rob and Khalil Herbert as your RB2 rest of the way is not as it's not as glorious as it may have felt in weeks past. I have a bad feeling about JT. Should I trade him for CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson? Sorry. Should I trade him and CeeDee Lamb for Garrett Wilson and Mixon? Ooh. That seems like it could be a disaster there, Mr. TD. It really could turn into a disaster real quick within that trade. Because if Garrett Wilson doesn't pan out to be anything, you could end up getting burnt there. Under the assumption that, again, these are assumptions, that JT doesn't do anything and is shut down, or at least is limited to some sort of capacity rest of the way here because of everything that's going on with the Colts. It's okay to make that trade, but again, super risky. Someone offered me Josh Allen and Josh Jacobs for Kenneth Walker and Deebo Samuel in a full PPR. Should I accept it? I would accept it, but only after we get some sort of confirmation regarding Josh Allen's elbow not being a problem. Dale Derrick says, full PPR, 2 running backs, 2 flex. I have Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Walker, Pierce, Juju, Foreman, Kirk, and Palmer. I'm starting Goff with Lamar on bye, Goddard over Ingram, and Waddle and JJ at wide receiver. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker. I mean, I don't see where you have a problem with this team, Dale. I mean, we've talked about this team in weeks past. If you're starting Henry, Jacobs, Walker, Pierce as your 2 running backs and 2 flex, and then your two starting wide receivers are JJ and Waddle, even if you have to play Goff this week and you have Goddard at tight end, bro, I mean, like, you're set, bro. I mean, like, it really is a solid lineup across the board. You've really lucked into a fantastic team there. Start Deontay Johnson. Yeah, again, we're going to talk about week 10 as the week progresses. Really got to go do some information diving as of right now. So if you guys have a week 10 question, probably won't be able to answer that. Couple more questions here that were on my list. Dak or Cousins rest of season? Amos, I would play Dak. I mean, I think he's probably more valuable rest of the way here. Let's see. What was the last one that was on this list? Okay. Yep. I think that pretty much here we go. A couple more. Someone dropped Pickens. Do I drop DJ Moore or Pittman for him? Someone drop it. Yeah, honestly, I think I'm willing to drop Michael Pittman Jr. for him. Yes, I am. I'm willing to make that swap. Okay, that's pretty much going to cover it, guys. I appreciate you guys coming out today. We've been here for about an hour and 45. Again, I typically like to run my streams on Monday night, typically for that long, mainly because as soon as I'm done here, your boy's got to go to the Excel sheet. Then he's got to open up the NFL Plus app. I got to go through every single one of these games in terms of some sort of capacity, figuring out what went wrong for some of those running backs last week and how we can adjust our rankings accordingly so that I can give you guys the most accurate rankings I can for week 10. Thank you, everybody. For those of you, of course, who donated today. Thank you for those of you who signed up via PrizePicks using promo code Andrew. Thank you for those of you who clicked the like button. And thanks for those of you who just left the tab open and walked away from your computer. It doesn't make a difference. I appreciate your guys' viewership. And until next time, which will be tomorrow, running back rankings, we'll obviously be live streaming Thursday night after the Thursday night football game. We'll also have a live stream on Saturday and Sunday, of course, Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning. XD, I did not miss it. I was going to get to it right before I closed out here. 6 and 3, Kyler, Etienne, Swift, Taylor, Rashad White, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Palmer, Godwin, Judy. Okay, any trades to potentially make here? if you're making a trade, again, you move. I mean, if you're 6-3, you don't have to make any trades. Quite honestly, you don't, because you can wait for Swift to come back. I think if you're moving Taylor, that's probably a good idea to do so. Move Taylor, move Palmer, move Judy. I think if you get rid of like a combination of Taylor with one of these other plays, get an upgraded wide receiver, upgrade a running back, I think you can get away with it and actually be in a pretty good spot. If you're trading away Taylor, though, you got to get a running back in exchange. Okay? Thank you. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, we're going to cue ahead. We're going to go and cue this music and let it close out today's episode. Appreciate it. Check out my waiver wire video from earlier today. Until next time.